Greetings, everyone. It's my honor to present our work on modeling to inform hepatitis elimination in this session today. So let me start with where modeling fits into the landscape of comparative effectiveness approaches. So as many of you know that experimental methods are by far the most commonly used and the gold standard for the evidence synthesis. For example, use of randomized controlled trials. Other methods include observational studies like prospective cohort studies or case control studies that are used to inform specific questions. Systematic reviews and meta-analysis which synthesize information from the observational experimental methods can also be important approaches to fill some evidence gaps. And finally, decision analytic methods, which essentially are mathematical models that bring together data from multiple approaches to span all of the above to inform specific questions of interest. In fact, our life is surrounded by different mathematical models, and there are several examples. This is one good example is the models used to project the path of hurricanes. And this is an example from 2017 where the timely projection of the path of hurricane led to timely evacuation and potentially saving of thousands of lives from the hurricane. But not all models are good models. We have some examples of not so good models. And if this rings a bell, this is the 2016 US presidential elections. At the night of the elections, the mathematical models were showing the predictions in one way. And then after a few hours, we knew the outcomes were very different. And this was heavily debated why most of the mathematical models for elections concluded the decisions wrongly. And then again, the many things like the inputs that went into those models could be the reasons why the models were wrong. The question is why and when do we need models in the context of healthcare? Well, one, direct experiments are not possible or ethical, such as we cannot conduct randomized controlled trials. In that case, we may have to rely on mathematical models to inform some decisions. We can use such models to understand the effects and outcomes of different strategies before they're really implemented in practice. We can generate evidence to support or reject hypotheses. We can use these models to guide future investments like new technologies. For example, if there is a need and value to come up with a new diagnostic test for hepatitis C. Such models can be very useful for informing different what-if scenarios and then later which can be implemented in practice. In the next few slides, I will give some examples of where models have been used in the context of hepatitis elimination for both B and C. One of the first examples that comes to people's mind is, can these models inform if hepatitis treatment is cost effective or cost saving? Well, a large body of work has been done around this. There are two specific tools, hepatitis B and C calculator, which were developed in collaboration with the World Health Organization. These are interactive tools with multiple countries, which can show that for a given price, if a treatment is cost effective or cost saving, and also how long will it take for those treatments to become either cost saving or cost effective. Now, such evidence can be very useful for price negotiations, can also be very useful for informing an investment for treatments for both hepatitis B and C. There's an example of the hepatitis C calculator, which also allows the downloadable report, which can be used for discussions with the executives and stakeholders, which can inform the benefit of investing in hepatitis C treatment. Extending this work further, this is one of the studies that showed using mathematical modeling, if hepatitis C treatment price, what is the hepatitis C treatment price at which treatment becomes cost saving in 5 years? As expected, we see substantial heterogeneity in different countries. And in many countries, the price of hep C treatment is below 150, whereas in others, it's between up to $10,000, where it can be cost saving for a given country. And again, this price can be used for this kind of analysis can be very useful for negotiations or for building an investment case for hepatitis treatment scale up. So next, we can also use such models to inform what is the most cost-effective way to diagnose hepatitis. And then taking an example from the hepatitis C, this is an extension of the hepatitis C calculator project, where we showed how to identify a cost-effective hepatitis C pathway. And why we need such that? Because we know that one size does not fit all when it comes to hepatitis C testing, because prevalence can vary substantially from one region to another. Because of different population characteristics, the outcomes can be very different, and the budget can also be very different. And more importantly, we know that the cost of screening can be one of the largest drivers of any hepatitis C elimination program, especially given that the prices of treatments have come down. So therefore, it's very important that we tailor the diagnostic strategies to each situation such that we identify the most cost-effective diagnostic pathway for a given setting. This is an interactive tool where users can go online and select a country and change specific settings or inputs like the cost of treatments or patient population, and allow users to create their own diagnostic pathways, starting from the first stage of screening, confirmation, how the liver staging is happened, and all the way to how the treatment response is as measured. Giving an example, like users can create their own pathways, like the ideal single site testing pathway or their screening camps and different settings, and then the tool can tell which is the most cost-effective strategy. And in this case, we find that for this country that a single site strategy would be the most effective and cost saving. It not only reduces the disease burden, but also is actually cost saving. A large body of work using mathematical models has informed how we can achieve hepatitis elimination. And there is an example of one of the mathematical models that was recently launched in collaboration with the task force. It's a hepatitis elimination tool, which is again very interactive tool that shows for a given setting and different parameters how to achieve hepatitis C elimination. The users can select the targets. If, for example, in this case, it's showing the default WHO target for hepatitis C elimination. And using that as an input, the mathematical model underlying that tool can inform the number needed to screen or diagnose or treat by calendar year to achieve hepatitis elimination in that country. As one can see that in this case, the scaling up of both screening and treatment would be required in Georgia to achieve Hep C elimination by 2030. Such mathematical models can also inform the cascade of hepatitis C care, which many of you are familiar with. What we see on the left side is the current cascade of care, and on the right side, it shows what would happen if we implement one of the strategies identified in that tool of the cascade of care will change by 2030. Another important outcome relevant to hepatitis C elimination is the cost of elimination program. And this is very relevant to the stakeholders. There's no doubt that scaling up of hepatitis C screening or hepatitis B treatment will result in the prevention of disease burden. The question is, how much would it cost? And would that result in any cost savings? Or if it's not cost saving, is it cost effective? And such mathematical models can be very helpful in informing such strategies. And here is an example of the cost of Hep C elimination in Georgia from this Hep C elimination tool. It's showing how much investment is needed by calendar year and then how that investment changes over time. Another great example of the models is to inform how countries are doing with respect to achieving the goal of hepatitis C elimination. And this work was published recently, shows the timing of Hep C elimination in a given country based upon their current interventions. And that shows that if country is on track or not track. If they are not on track, it provides them the message that something needs to be changed. Could be scaling up of screening or scaling up of treatment, or more investment is needed so that Hep C elimination can be achieved by the target date. A similar example from hepatitis B elimination, showing the feasibility of Hep B elimination in different regions of the world and the timings. Again, the message is very similar, that how models have been helpful in starting the discussions with different stakeholders. If countries are not on track to achieve the elimination goals, what can be done? So far, we have seen many great examples of how models can be useful in informing hepatitis elimination. But these models do come with a lot of limitations and challenges that one should be aware of. There's no doubt that the models to inform hepatitis elimination or treatment or screening cost effectiveness are complex. So it becomes, it's important that the communication of the messages from these models is communicated in an appropriate way to somebody who's not familiar with mathematical models. As many of you have heard this phrase, garbage in, garbage out, this is very much relevant to the models. The outcomes are only as good as the inputs that are used to inform such models. And as we get better evidence of the inputs, there's a need to inform, update the outcomes to have up-to-date model outcomes. Another interesting fact about hepatitis elimination is that it's a moving target, because as we have making progress over time in countries, the goal is also shifting, because there is always a need to inform or update the latest number needed to screen or treat to achieve hepatitis C elimination or Hep B elimination goals. Another common limitation of such models is that they're considered black box. Again, this is linked with the complexity of these models. To a large extent, some of these models can be made transparent by, for example, allowing users to interact with them, changing some of the inputs, and looking at how the outcomes will change based on those inputs. And a recent work done by several groups can be very useful in engaging with the stakeholders to convince them about the benefits of using such models to inform hepatitis elimination. And finally, and one of the most important limitations of any models is the reproducibility. And to a large extent, examples we have seen from several areas. This is one from the HIV showing that different models are projecting very different outcomes. So there is a burden on the society in the community of people building mathematical models to have some competitive modeling approach where multiple models can converge to similar outcomes, which are always more convincing than a single model providing some directions. To summarize, decision analytic models can combine data from multiple sources and provide results that otherwise may not be feasible. And insights from such models can inform the timing of hepatitis elimination, cost of an hepatitis elimination program, and these informations can be used to build an investment case for elimination. Like any other comparative effectiveness method, mathematical models have limitations and pitfalls that people should be aware of. With that, I would like to thank you all for your attention